Hey, everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Cafe. I'm your host, Ken Somerville, and today we're talking about garden microclimates. So let's start with what is a microclimate? So, a microclimate is basically any area that you change on your property or inside your greenhouse, etc., that has a different environment than the surrounding area. So this is going to be both directions, whether you're warming up an area or you're cooling down an area. Most people in Canada are looking to warm areas, or in northern climates, we're looking to warm up an area. So we're using things like greenhouses, okay? In the south, where it's hot, or in areas where it's hot, hey, Super Sagu, my brother. And guys, for those of you that don't know, that's hello in Mohawk. So, anyway, when you're using a microclimate for cooling, you're creating shade, which is the cooling. And then there's other applications that you can also use for cooling. You can use misters. This is something that the Europeans, in say Italy, Greece, etc., have used extensively, is creating a little mist of water in their seating areas. Okay, so they have a nice gazebo. They have a hose that goes around, and they have little pinholes. So when they put pressure there, it's just a little mist that comes out. That moisture helps to cool the environment in a hot environment. So for us in the northern climates, of course, we're not looking so much for cooling. We're looking for heating. Hey, Bohemian, diggity dank. Welcome, guys. We're looking for warmth. Okay. So I know when I was doing research on growing, I ran across one gentleman who literally was, oh, there's my phone, was literally creating a greenhouse that he could move. So he had it on wheels so he could move it across his field. What he was doing, he was planting carrots, letting them freeze in the winter, and then he was moving the greenhouse to the area where he hadn't harvested, warming up the soil, harvesting those carrots. Because they had went through that freeze cycle, they were extremely sweet. Okay, so he was getting fresh carrots in the middle of winter, and they were like scrumptious beyond belief. This is something that you guys can look at, okay, if you have the available land to create a movable greenhouse that you can use to do things like that. So you can have these fresh, out of the soil, nutritious carrots, and I'm sure there's other vegetables that would be the same, but then you're not having to store them anywhere, and you can get these fresh. So a microclimate he created with his greenhouse and being able to move it. Another one that I saw was actually adding a second layer in a greenhouse. So you've got fresh starts that you've just started. It's really cold outside. You've got your normal greenhouse. And guys, a greenhouse, I believe it's one or two zones that it changes. So he was doing his plants, he had his greenhouse. Then he created a second greenhouse inside to cover his starts. So he was going from 2 to 4 zones instead of just having the 2 zones. So it gave him the availability to start plants that needed that extra heat to survive, and not having to worry so much about heating his greenhouse, because the heat from the sun during the day was raising the temperature up. The second covering was holding that heat in that much more. So these are microclimates you can literally create inside of a greenhouse, and whether it's heating or it's cooling. So for the southern climates, you're using shade cloth, okay? And you're getting different types of shade cloth will give you different results. The thicker the shade cloth, the less the radio waves, the less the photons of energy come in to heat up because they're blocked and sent back out. So if you have, say, a grade 1 shade cloth, then if you doubled that, you're creating that extra reflection and not allowing the heat in. So that's another form of a microclimate. For the heat, if you put in a misting system, you're getting that much more benefit. So in an average garden, hey Bigfoot, in an average garden outside, creating a microclimate. Now, it's actually very simple, especially because I live in the north. We just had a bunch of snow. There's actually a microclimate has formed in front of my garage. Now, my garage has a big white door on it. It faces south, so when the sun hits it, the sun is reflecting, warming that area that much more. So that is a microclimate. Anything that you create, even a raised bed, on the back side of that raised bed, okay, so let's say the north side is going to be cooler than the south side. So if you're creating trellises, those are creating microclimates. If you live in an area where you have a huge amount of wind and you put up a berm, you're forcing the air to go up and over that berm. So what's on the back side of that berm is considered a microclimate. So if you're blocking the north wind from the coolness, what's on front of that berm before that air drops back down is going to be a microclimate where you can grow plants earlier than you would be able to without that. Hey, yellow skunk, it's very important to understand that you can create different microclimates in your garden as well as you look at the type of plant you're growing, and if it needs a cooler area, if it needs a hotter area, you can create these zones inside of your garden. Now, we've got Yellow Skunk Farms coming on next month. He's an indoor grower, and he has created a bunch of different microclimates in his indoor environment. So it doesn't have to necessarily be an outdoor environment. You can use an indoor environment. You can have one area where your fans aren't blowing so much. That would be a microclimate in that specific area. Now, Yellow Skunk Farms, he literally has a stream basically running through his grow, creating a lot more moisture. So he's helping to keep the environment specific to what his needs. So he's created his own growing environment, his own microclimate inside of his growing space. So I'm up in northern Canada. We can't grow year round. So when I was growing indoors, I was creating my own microclimate by adding heat, by adding the lights, by adding fans that were moving the air, by adding humidifiers, dehumidifiers. The microclimate closest to my dehumidifier was different than the climate 20 feet away from that dehumidifier. Understanding that each thing that you add or take away in your environment that blocks wind, light, rain, etc. You're creating all different microclimates. So these are things that you can replicate in your growing environment, whether that's your garden, whether that's your indoor grow. You can change that a zone to become its own environment. So for you guys that do KNF and you're doing, IMO collections, look for those microclimates. If it's normally a west wind that blows through that area, look on the east side of an obstruction, and you're going to find a lot more biology to collect in your IMO, because say you have a log, the wind's going up and over, so things are collecting on the back side, and in that environment you're going to have a protected area to collect your IMO. So that's just a little trick that you guys can use if you're doing Korean natural farming and you're collecting IMOs. Look for those spots that are collecting more organic material that's breaking down in that specific zone, and place your IMO box there. Akusa, good to see you. Guys, I'm not really paying that much to the text on the chat, just looking at the names. So just to let you know, I'm not going to be looking, unless you put it all in caps or something, put a big question mark. I'm not going to be able to really notice that there's questions. So I have a question for you guys, actually. For the days that we don't have guests, I'm looking for topics that you guys want to hear about. So if you guys want to put in, your topics you'd like me to talk about into the chat, that would be a great help for me getting to know what you guys want me to talk about. So back to the microclimates. Let's use your deck. You have a house, you got a deck, it's all open, it's beautiful outside. It's all one climate, okay, on that deck. As soon as you put up a lattice, okay, on one side of it, you have created a microclimate. And it's that easy to create any type of a microclimate that you want. So if you want to start growing earlier in the year, you would need to create some kind of a microclimate to create that. Now, in the northern latitudes, we have people using what's called a cold frame. So they're built a little box with a flip lid where they're putting glass or plastic, something that the sun can penetrate, that holds in the heat. They're creating that little microclimate that they can grow food year round. So the vegetables that you would be putting in there are cold tolerant vegetables. So say lettuce, your brassicas, your spinaches, etc., are a cold loving plant. Lettuce can literally freeze, turn around, and come back. Okay, so Lily's bringing me a book of a young lady. She's from Eastern Canada, from Nova Scotia, and it's called Year-Round Vegetable Gardener. Okay, so Nikki Jabbour. Okay, so you guys can look that up. This is her cold frame. You can see it in the background here, that she has created where she can grow food year round in a northern climate. So you can have fresh food year round using the principle of microclimates. She's created that microclimate. And as I was saying, a lettuce plant can literally totally freeze. And as long as the temperature comes back up when the sun comes up, it will literally unfreeze itself and start to grow again. Now, of course, it's not going to be the speed of growth that you would see in a normal environment, but it is going to give you growth. It is going to allow that plant to keep growing throughout the winter, where you can go out in the afternoon and harvest some fresh greens for your meal in the evening, okay, for your supper time, for your kids, etc. Having that fresh, nutrient dense food is fantastic. So microclimates are a fantastic use for any type of growing. Now, if you have a hot tolerant plant that needs the heat, of course, you're not going to be doing growing in northern climates where it's going to freeze, because those types of plants don't have the same biology that can freeze and come back the way that your brassicas, your lettuces do. So be aware of that, excuse me, in whatever you're growing. So creating microclimates in your garden, I mentioned berms, I mentioned lattice. If you're using sunflowers, okay, a very tall plant, you can create a microclimate around that. You can create a microclimate depending on what you're growing, the size of the leaf structure. If it has, say, a watermelon leaf, which is a very large leaf, if you have that, above something, you're getting a lot of shade. So for people that don't understand, you can plant a very sun-loving plant in a shady area, and this is experiments that people have done. The leaf structure on that plant will literally, instead of being a small leaf, it will expand out. So the biology is going to recognize that it's not giving, or the sunlight isn't enough, and it will literally broaden the leaf structure to help catch more sun. So this isn't something you really want to do, but it really depends on what you have for growing area. The best, of course, is to follow the dictates on your seed package, full sun. But then yesterday, when we were talking to Adam, who's growing in the Nevada desert, having that full sun in that environment, the plant, you don't want to have full sun. Okay, so look at your environment. If you can have, so in the desert, say, if you have other plants that are very, very loving of the sun, like the hemp plant he's growing, and you plant on the shadier side those plants that want the full sun, but the cannabis is blocking part of that sun, that intensity, then they're going to do a lot better than having them by themselves. So you can create microclimates using the plants you're growing in your garden, your taller plants to your shorter plants. It all really focuses on how you want to grow your growing environment. So whether you have a large garden, you have a small garden, it's all up to you how you want to create these microclimates. You have a planter, say it's a white planter, so it's going to reflect heat, it's going to reflect the sun's energy. If you have a plant that you really want to have growing earlier than normal, you can use that environment to your advantage. Hey, Rhythms of Creation, you can do this, guys. It just takes a little bit of thought and a little bit of planning and understanding when you can plant those plants. So if you're looking for a spring plant, you are going to be looking for those cold tolerant plants up in the northern latitude. And you can use, a raised garden bed to your advantage. You can, before you can plant in your raised garden bed, you can plant in front of it because you're getting that microclimate. So, you get a sheet of plywood or white plastic you can put in front on the south side if you're up in the northern hemisphere, the north side if you're in the southern hemisphere, to reflect that sunlight. And then look at the cold frame design. Okay, so you have your, say, a 2-foot tall raised bed. You put your white plastic, put a piano hinge, put a piece of glass where you can enclose that. You're creating an instant greenhouse and have it removable. So, if you're going to have a frost, you can use it. When you're not going to have a frost, you can remove it. So you can create microclimates specifically for your garden. Hey, Samuel. Samuel's on LinkedIn. Great to see you, Samuel. You can create anything that you really want by doing this. So say you're in the southern latitudes and it's too hot. So create a misting system using the same concept, only your frame is got shade cloth in it, and you've got just a misting tube happening. Okay, and this can be as simple as just a plastic tube. Take a needle and poke little holes. Okay, and you're going to have a little bit of moisture dripping out of there, and it's going to create a microclimate for you that's going to be amazing, because when the sun isn't at its peak and it's not too hot, and that's a hot loving plant, you can have it open so it's getting that full sun. And then when the sun is too high up, you can close it down, get the shade and the moisture and the environment that the plant wants more, and you can grow amazing things just with a little bit of foresight and foreknowledge. And that's what channel is about, is sharing knowledge with you guys. And I don't know everything, but I know quite a bit, okay? Because I've been studying all this different stuff for, decades now. So we've talked about the reflecting the sun. We've talked about, creating an environment for cooling. If you guys want an environment that's more, hey, Dr. Levy, more of a 1 million pumpkins. Okay, cool. More of an environment conducive to a specific plant. Study that plant. Find out exactly what it needs. Does it need to be by a creek or a running water? Is it, hey, Scotty, is it more, conducive to a dry environment? I know Leighton Morrison has talked about this, where he had a water-loving plant beside one that doesn't want water. He created the soil structure specific to each plant and a structure in between them to stop the transfer of that moisture. So the one was loving its water and the other one was loving its dryness. You can create this in your own environment at home in your garden, in your grow, just by using your knowledge of different types of soil and how they drain. Okay, so a little more sand, it it's going to drain that better. So your plants that are specifically wanting more water, you're going to want to create an environment that's going to hold more water. And you can do this when you understand the different soil structures and what they do. So you can form a clay layer that's going to not allow the moisture through. And it's like when these guys are going out and a good channel, if you want to learn about ponds, is Let's Dig 18. This is a gentleman that goes out and commercially digs ponds. He, cleans ponds for the silt, etc. But he explains how to build a dam, okay? How to create it so the water can't penetrate through it. And it's a matter of different types of clay that he's using to stop water from penetrating. Little channels like that, and he's quite well known in that industry. He helps you to understand how to build that dam to make that pond to hold water. You can use that type of knowledge in your garden to build your own garden pond, to build those different environments, so you put in a clay dam between the plant that doesn't want water and the plant that really likes water, and you control the transfer between the two, and you're creating a microclimate for each zone, the moist zone, the dry zone, just like using the sun, like using the shade cloth. You guys have the opportunity, with a little bit of knowledge, understanding, and planning, to be able to create different micro zones around your house, around your property, that will allow you to grow earlier, to grow later in the season, to start plants that you would not normally be able to plant, and keep those plants healthy, happy, and vibrant using microclimates. So there's really, the sky is the limit, because whatever you guys can think up to create these micro zones, it's just going to benefit you. It's going to benefit anybody around you that you talk to and show, like, look what I did. Okay. Have that excitement when you're talking to people. Share the knowledge that you have gained and give it out for free. Okay. Help other people to understand that they can do these things as well as you. So if you're wanting to create a microclimate, you have the basic foundation, no understanding. You're just watching the last, almost 30 minutes of this talking head. Okay. You get the basic idea of how to create a microclimate. It is very important to understand that you're creating a microclimate using mulch. That mulch is blocking the sun, not allowing evaporation from your soil, and you're creating a microclimate now, not for the plant, but for the biology. And quite, I'm all about the biology. It has to have that microclimate, and it is the one microclimate that is essential for all plants, because all biology needs that microclimate to survive, to build the cells in your plant. The more you do in that way, the better off you're going to be. So you don't just think of the microclimate for the plant, think of the microclimate for the biology. So the mulch is a microclimate underneath that mulch. It's staying moister, etc. Okay. So when you're planning your garden and you're planning where and how to put in microclimates, and that could be, you have really rocky soil and you put up a bunch of rocks, build a rock wall. Behind that rock wall, on each side of it, is going to be a different microclimate. Hey, Rory. So planning your environment is a key point to having success in your garden. Understanding the different microclimates that you're creating is going to allow you to put plants in that are specifically happy in different microclimates, whether that's hotter, cooler, more moisture, etc. You have the opportunity, my friends, to create these environments that are going to benefit you, your plants, and the environment. When you're creating that microclimate, you're creating a happy environment for the biology to grow your plant. So there's not a lot left to say about microclimates. We've covered zones, so it can cool your zones down, it can warm your zones up. If you're using a greenhouse, you can create multiple microclimates inside of your greenhouse, whether that's raising the temperature or lowering it, just by using more levels of microclimate. I'll give you an example for the north here. We always have what we call the north wind. That's very cool, cold, minus 40, minus 50 Fahrenheit. We want to block that north wind. So a lot of times we will, in our greenhouse, block the north wall. And I've seen straw bales, I've seen, just plywood and insulation, just to block that cooling effect and allowing the heat to stay in the greenhouse for that much longer. You can create microclimates by digging your greenhouse into the ground. Okay, I've seen lots of people in northern climates creating a pit for their greenhouse. Okay, now it's not just a pit, they're building walls, etc., but they're creating the environment that they can grow more. Now, you can also use things like barrels of water, because water actually is very conductive to heat. And I've seen people put up a wall of barrels with water, painting them black, so they're grabbing the heat, holding that heat in. They're creating a microclimate. Yellow Skunk Farms, his stream coming in is creating a microclimate. You can do that in your greenhouse. I've seen it done lots where they literally have an aquaponics system, so growing plants with the fish waste. They're having the microclimate of the fish and that extra moisture coming into the environment. That water, of course, retains the heat and is releasing that heat into the environment, creating a cacophony of different micro environments. The closest plants are getting the most moisture from that environment, understanding your plants that you're growing and how much they need and what their best environment is for their growth, and creating that microclimate specifically for that plant is going to benefit you. So, say you're growing a tropical plant that wants a lot of moist air around it, you can create a misting area specifically for that plant. So their zone has that extra moisture. And then going out from that plant, you can look at other plants that like more moist to more dry. And as you move away from your misting area, you would plant those plants that going from moist loving to dry loving. So it's available to your imagination what you can create. And it doesn't have to be anything special. It can be made from, very cheap materials to be able to create these zones. My wife, she calls me cheap. I call myself frugal because I keep stuff that most people would never keep, because I can take those materials and reuse them, recycle them to create things like this, like pallets. Having a wall of pallets on the north side of your garden is, if you're in the north, to block that cooler wind, you're creating a microclimate behind that, yet you're still allowing some airflow to go through. It's things like that that are easy to acquire that you can use to create a microclimate. If you have a glass shop in your area, go and ask them if they have any garbage glass that you can, grab. Then you can create your own, boxes. You can create your own microclimates. Look at the area around you and what's available to you for your creation of these microclimates. Create zones in your garden that have different microenvironments. The more the better, because then you're planting a lot of different species in your environment, and you're creating ones that are happier and happier and happier because they're suited for that environment. Now, I noticed that Supernessa said the plants will, adapt to the environment, and that is very, very true. And Adam mentioned that yesterday for the CBD, the hemp plants that he's growing, that when they first started, they weren't as adaptable in that environment. But each season, as he's collecting seeds and replanting those seeds in that environment, they're making that change to what we call or the French call terroir, or that environment that you're planting in. Your plants will slowly adapt to the exact environment that you're planting in, but only if you're collecting the seeds from that plant and replanting in that exact spot or that exact zone. So if you aren't creating microclimates, you just have an open garden, your entire environment, say let's say Hawaii, okay, that's the microclimate or the major climate that you have. If you're not creating the microclimates, it's your overall environment that a plant is going to slowly adapt to over time, and over using the seeds from the plant exactly in that environment. So you can take a hot loving plant and slowly move it into a colder zone by reusing the seeds, because the genetics of the plant are slowly going to be changed by the biology. The biology is going to register what's going on, and in the seed itself, it's going to start changing things just a little bit each grow, each season, to match the environment. And guys, if you don't understand, we do it too. Our bodies acclimatize to where we live. Now, I live in Alberta. It's generally very cool here. So in British Columbia, in the Okanagan Valley, it's a very warm zone. Okay. So when I moved from Alberta to the Okanagan, and I first went there, the first year I went there, okay, I was going, oh, it's so hot here. And I was pulling off, wearing just a t-shirt and shorts. The people that lived there, they were still in long sleeves, jackets, etc., because they found it cool. Over the next couple of years, I was wearing jackets too. Okay. Your body adjusts just like the plants adjust. We, as the human species, have an amazing, amazing adaptability to go and live in different environments and be able to live there well. Now, if you're coming from a tropical zone and you're going up into, say, the Northwest Territories, which is, getting close up into the Arctic, okay, you're going to suffer, okay? Your blood's only going to thicken up so much over time, and your children are going to be much more adaptable to that situation. So you can only push so far, so fast. It's the generational. It's that seed of the plant, the seed of us, of course, or our children. And it might take 2 or 3 generations of those children to adjust to a really different environment than what the parent was living in. So if you're living in the high Arctic and that's what your body has adjusted to, for your entire family was born there for generations, and you move to, say, the tropics, you're only going to be able to go so far, but then your next generation, just like our plants, adjusting to that environment. That's where microclimates for human beings are another thing that we can use, just like I was talking about the Italians in the areas having the misters to help keep them cool. Even though they're used to that environment, it's nicer to have that little bit more moisture to help them. You have to understand, the hotter and drier the environment, the more moisture that you need to consume, the more moisture your plant needs to consume just from evaporation. If you're in the desert and the sun is sucking the moisture right out of your skin, you need to consume that much more liquids to hold the moisture. It's the same for the plants. If you are in the desert and you find a shady spot, the temperature is drastically reduced in that shady spot, yet it may only be a few degrees. But when you go from the hot sun into that shade, it feels like a lot more than just a few degrees. We get that in going both directions, whether it's cold into heat or heat into cold. Our bodies notice that. Our plants are the same way. We understand that in this, especially this channel and what we talk about, that creating those environments are very, very advantageous to both us and our plants. So there's not a lot more I can really say on microenvironments other than use your imagination, use things that are around you, use things that you can get for free. It's all up to you where you live, what's available in your area. You live in an apartment in New York that say it's north facing, you are going to be able to only grow so much on your balcony or in your window, where someone that's in, say, Florida, they have a whole different batch of things that they have available to them. So it all really depends on you and your imagination on what you can create out of the things that are around you. Just, I'll give you a little pop out in my brain that just happened, is taking a plastic tote from Walmart, cutting the bottom out of it, putting a piece of glass in there, and all of a sudden you have a growing environment inside of that you have created. It can be as simple as that. Having a piece of plastic, clear plastic, that you put over that as well. You're creating a different zone. Okay. You can create whatever you can imagine from things that you have in your environment or things that you can find in your environment. You can go, and if you need, some, metal, look at who's got a metal recycling plant in your area. All these recyclers, there's lots of stuff that you can go in, and they'll have an area where you can buy bits and pieces very, very cheap, generally, because it's, scrap, it's recycled. Okay. So look for those kind of things, guys. Don't expect yourself to go out and buy everything brand new. Save your money for other things. Look at what you can recycle, because that helps all of us. It helps our planet to recycle a lot of these materials. That's where, that a lot of our homesteaders, and we've got a couple of great ones coming up. We got one guy that's building walls out of a material that's gonna shock you guys. He's coming up in a few days. You can build houses using, old wine bottles for windows. Okay. Look at what is possible around you. People are building houses out of tires, filling them up with dirt. Okay. You can recycle so much. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the old bathtub laying on its side, with dirt in it and flowers coming out. That type of thing is taking something that would have went to a landfill and using it and making it something of beauty. These are things that a lot of us don't really think about, is how to recycle these materials. We just take them to the dump. But there's a lot of things that you can do if you allow yourself to be a child again and go, hey, that box, I can play with that box, and I can make it a fort. I can make it this, I can make it that. And all it was a refrigerator box from the new refrigerator you got. But the kid in you found all of these different things that you could create from that box. Use your imagination. Become that child. Find that love and that inspiration within you to build that fort. to do these things. This is what we have really missed growing up, is reconnecting with that child's imagination on anything is possible. Okay? You can take all kinds of different materials to make your microclimates. It's up to you how you want to do it. So I'll give you a quick example. A big tractor tire. Okay, it's 4 feet wide and 4 feet tall, and you dig it 2 feet in, and you've got the big hole in the center, and then you've got the rubber around the sides. How many microclimates do you think you've just created? The one where the sun comes through the hole is a microclimate. The shaded area is a microclimate. It's stuff like that that you can really go, wow, I can do all this stuff with stuff that would generally be considered garbage by most. You can create something extraordinary for yourself, your garden. So space challenges, can work both ways. On you've got too much space, you've got not enough space. You need to plan your successional gardens. And that's where, I was talking about the cold frame that you could remove. That's something that everybody should be looking at too, because your brassicas are a cold loving plant. You're not going to be growing them through the heat of the summer because they're not going to grow as well. So think of successional planting. I have this, in this garden bed, for the first, month or 2 months of the season. And then I'm planting, while I still have, say, the lettuce in here, I'm going to plant my tomatoes in there. And as my tomato plants are growing up and starting to shade the brassicas more and more, they're creating a microclimate, which helps your brassicas because they don't like the heat as much. But when it gets to the point where it's harmful to your brassicas, take the brassicas, chop them off, leave the roots, guys, leave the roots, mulch around them again, and let things go to the tomato now. Okay, things like peas that need a trellis if you're hanging your peas. Okay, you can use that, the backside of that, on each side of it as microclimates. So there's so many things available to you guys that you can look at to create a microclimate that's transitional through the seasons, okay, whether you need heat or whether you need cooling. And remember, the sun doesn't stay in the exact same spot year round. It moves, other than I think the tropics is pretty much the same. I've never been in the tropics, so I'm not sure. But, your northern and southern latitudes where the sun does shift in the sky, you can take that into consideration in your plan. That's one of the keys, guys, is make a plan. Draw things out, experiment. Okay? Life is about learning and growing and understanding more and more. And the more you play, and whether that's playing just in your mind and planning things out and drawing things out on paper, the better you're going to be, because it's going to put that creativeness back into you. It's going to bring that child's imagination back into you, and you're going to definitely be better. The more you do that, you're going to open yourself up to possibilities, and you're going to start looking at the world differently. And you're going to look at that, stack of pallets at your local store and go, I wonder if I can ask if I can grab a couple of those, because you're going to go, hey, I could use that, to create a compost bin. I can use that to create this. I can strip those boards down off that pallet and I can create a raised garden bed. I can do because your imagination has been freed and you're allowing yourself to imagine what you can do, what's possible. So keep that in mind, guys. Hi, Penny. Keep that in mind that you can look at something and go, hey, I wonder what I could make out of that. I wonder what I could use that for. Instead of throwing it away, can I use that? You buy a big bunch of, say, paper towel, okay? And you're buying a 12 pack. It's wrapped in that plastic. It's not a high grade plastic. It might last for a couple of months out in the sunshine. But hey, I could take that plastic. It's clear plastic. And oh, hey, I just made a cold frame. And I have a greenhouse because I've used this plastic. Things like that, guys. Most people don't think of that. They just ball it up, throw it in the recycle. There's so much available. The cardboard. Grab a bucket of white paint, paint it white. There's your wall behind, on your raised bed that's going to reflect the heat and make that microclimate. And it was just used cardboard. The availability of your imagination is going to allow you to create things that are going to blow your mind. It's going to blow my mind because, I'm doing that kind of thing in my brain all the time. But your life and your experience, what's available in your area, is going to dictate what you're going to be able to do. And you're going to come up with things that I would never think of because I don't have those materials available in my area. So it's things like that, guys, that are really going to take you to the next level. Take your garden to the next level. Take your microclimates to the next level. And say, I'll give you one last thing. We're getting close to the hour, guys, but you live in the tropics, you got big banana leaves, okay? You're looking for, a cessation to the heat and the strength of the sun in your garden. You put up some, fishing line, high-grade fishing line, some posts, and you just lay the banana leaves on top. As they dry out, you crumble them up and you use them as mulch. And then the next day you grab some more banana leaves only for the couple of 3 hours where you're trying to really block that excessive heat and sun. Things like that. Look at your environment, guys. There's so much you have available. Okay. So guys, let me tell you, tomorrow I'm looking for topics, guys. So help me out. Put it in the chat. Put it in the comments below some of the things you'd like me to talk about. Hey, Shawnee. We've got Stefan Burns on Thursday, our geophysicist friend. Then we've got a couple of gentlemen coming up on Friday and Saturday that are homesteaders. Amazing content. Don't have their names on the top of my head, and my sheet's too far. I need my glasses on to go see over there. Okay. But we've got amazing people coming up. Let's see. We've got Andy Lopez on Sunday. We've got Chris Trump on Monday. Any of you guys that, would like to come on, reach out. I'll put up the email. Just there we go. A little Chiron on the bottom. It's all about the biology at gmail.com. If you have a channel and you want to come on and have a chat, I want to know what your experiences are. I want to know your successes and failures. Come on, reach out, guys. Andy Lopez is on Conversations on Ken's Cafe on this coming Sunday. Andy Lopez and myself on Gardens the Untold Story are on Wednesday, tomorrow evening. So I've got Andy loves to do videos, and he's got so much available knowledge. You guys, we're going to be having an interview with him. So, guys, as I was saying, if you want to come on, I would love to have you come on and tell your story and see where you're going. And you can ask questions, etc., of me as well, in the comments, etc. Leave topics for me. If you guys have people that you would like to see come on, please, instead of just sending me their names, etc., if you've been following those channels for any length of time, you can reach out to them. Ask them if they'd be interested in coming on. And if they are, then have them reach out to me. And I only have so many hours in the days, guys. So help me help you guys by reaching out to these people for me and helping me get them onto the channel. Anyway, guys, I'm going to pop back onto the comment side since I was on the banner side. Love you guys all. Even from a first-time grower, Bigfoot, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but if you're a first-time grower and you want to come on, brother. It's easier for me to talk to you and go over that kind of stuff and answer your questions than it is to me just being a talking head here and covering different topics. People can learn from interaction. So help me interact, guys. Love you all. I'll see you tomorrow on tomorrow's show. Check out whatever topic I end up talking about tomorrow. I'll have it up later today, this evening, depending on where you are in the world. So, guys, love you all. We'll talk to you soon and have a great day.